Welcome back. Now that we can create a form, well, we want it to actually be able to do something. And so we're going to look at a couple of ways. We're going to work our way towards being able to type something into this text area, press the button, and have it greet us like a custom greeting. So we'll try it. I've got this variation. We'll say Andy, and we'll hit the submit button. And it does say something. It says, "Hi there, thanks for clicking me." It doesn't seem to know my name, but it is excited to see me. That's great news. I'm getting some kind of response from this thing. Well, that's great. This little dude here, this is called an alert box. It's a kind of a rude thing you've probably seen before on websites. It's fine. It works, but we find them a little bit annoying, right? Well, the reason we use them is they're easy. So we'll use one of these first, and then we'll work our way to a better solution. Sound good? Yeah. Well, let's see how this works. As usual, we'll use our old friend Control-U to look at the source code, and we can see exactly what's going on here. If you take a look, the HTML is very similar to what you saw in the last example. If you need a review of how this form was built, go back and look at that last video. And you can see it's almost the same, except we've added one thing to the button. The button, we've set its type to button, and then we've added what's called an onClick. OnClick is interesting because that's what's called an event handler. It's an attribute in HTML, but what you can feed to it is instructions. Wow, that's new. Okay, remember, HTML was about describing what things mean. CSS was about describing how things look. A new language, JavaScript, is for describing what things do. Oh, that's profound, and it's really important. Because, of course, if we want to make video games, we've got to make our computer do things. So we're making the jump over to JavaScript right now. Oh, it's pretty exciting. Which, of course, begs the question, what do we want it to do? Of course, onClick, so when it gets clicked, we want to do something. What do we want it to do? Well, we want it to greet. That would be great if a web browser already knew how to greet. But that's not built in. So what are we going to do? We're going to tell it what it means to greet. Yeah, that's exactly what we're going to do. Sound cool? It is cool. Take a look back at the header area, and you'll see something interesting here that we haven't had before. I have a script/script pair. That feels a lot like the style/style, and I can see why it would, because the style/style allowed you to attach CSS to your web page. Well, the script/script allows you to attach JavaScript code to your web page. Oh, okay. Now, JavaScript is a programming language. Programming languages are very specific, and they can seem a little scary, intimidating, but don't worry, they're not. The whole goal here is we're going to give instructions to the computer, and you can do this. So let's take a look at what we've got. Line 7 says, I'm creating a function called greet. If you remember functions from math, these are even cooler because they have full names rather than f of x or something. It's greet. And so I'm telling it, hey, when I ask you to greet, this is what I want you to do. That make sense? Okay, don't worry about the squiggle brace. We'll come back to that. Inside the greet function, we've got a line of code. It says, alert, hi there, thanks for clicking me. Well, alert is a really neat function. It's built into JavaScript, and what it does, well, it pops up that dialog box we just saw. Ah, yeah, it's neat, isn't it? Yeah, whenever the browser sees an alert command, it says, oh, okay, pop up a dialog, and then whatever text is inside the parentheses, that's what you want me to display. That's exactly what happens. Let's take a look at it. Here, I'll kind of put them both together so you can see what's happening as we go. Resize that one too. So watch the code, watch the program, see what it does. It's doing nothing, it's doing this, nothing, it's doing nothing. The button's sitting there saying, go ahead, I dare you, click me, you try it, I know what to do. So when I do click it as the user, it says, oh my goodness, what do I do? Oh, I need to greet. It runs up to the function, oh, don't worry, I know how to do that. It pops up that dialog. Hi there, thanks for clicking me. Isn't that awesome? It's awesome. We just made your computer do something. You're no longer a passenger, you're now a driver. We are programmers, baby, because now we're telling the computer what to do. And it's about time, isn't it? Yes, it is. So that's pretty exciting. Wow, a lot of neat things just happened here. Let's take a look at what we just saw. We're telling the button that when it gets clicked, it should do something. Usually what you'll do is you'll tell it to run some sort of a function. Okay, great. Now inside the script/script pair, we create a function. Let's take another look at what's happening. The script/script pair itself doesn't have a lot, but it has this attribute type as text JavaScript. That's pretty much the only type you're ever going to use for this tag. It's possible to use others, but it's rare. So most of the time when you make a script, you're just going to make it JavaScript. Now inside that, we've changed languages, just like you saw us do in CSS. When we were inside the CSS style tag, we changed out of HTML to CSS. Same thing is happening here. When we're inside a script tag, we've changed out of HTML. We're now writing code in JavaScript. Okay. Now, programming languages are kind of specific, so let's make sure that we understand a little bit about the rules. They're pretty easy. They're not too difficult. First, we can make a function. Well, you saw that. Function, greet. Function names always have parentheses after the end. Sometimes we'll put stuff in those parentheses, sometimes we'll not. For now, we're just leaving it alone. The little left squiggle brace means I'm about to begin something. Something's going to start here. So we use that in a couple of places when we make functions and when we make loops and choices and so on. So that left squiggle brace, this guy right here, means I'm building something. You notice we indent inside it. You also note that there is an ending version of it, a right squiggle brace. The right squiggle brace means I'm done with that thing I started right over here. Oh, makes sense. Okay, so you have the paired up braces, and we indent inside. That's not a strict law of the browser, but it's a pretty strict law of a programming teacher. So they're going to probably expect you to do that, or if you ever do it for a living, you absolutely need to indent. Okay, got that. So we got this left squiggle brace says something big is happening, in this case, a function. The right squiggle brace says, I'm done with that. Now the code in between those is one or more lines of instructions. And what we have here at the end, well, there's punctuation. That shouldn't freak you out because I think most of you have written in English. And other human languages. Well, in human languages, we commonly use punctuation to help us know, okay, this is the end of one thought and the beginning of another. And sometimes we use different punctuation for different things. We may use a period to indicate it's a statement, a question mark, an exclamation point for other kinds of information. The same thing is true in programming. But typically it's simpler. In programming in most languages, you just use a semicolon to indicate this is the end of an idea. This is the end of basically a sentence. Yeah, the period is used for other stuff, so we just use a semicolon for that. Does that make sense? And when do you use a semicolon? Pretty much every line that isn't already ending with a squiggle brace. Oh, okay. That's fine. Okay, now let's take a look at the rest of this. We have this alert. Well, alert is the name of a function that's built into the browser. I'll tell you a few more as you need them. There's not really that many. There's 3 or 4 that we'll use this week, but they're pretty easy to understand. What does alert do? Well, it alerts something. It pops up that little dialog. Alert has parentheses. It's a function. Oh, kind of like greet, but alert is built in. And so it's built into the browser. Anytime you have a browser, it'll know how to do this. And what goes inside the parentheses here is some special instructions. What do you want me to alert? Well, it's expecting me to send it a message, a text message. And so text messages here in programming typically go inside quotes. Programmers actually call them strings, not text. That makes you sound official, I guess. Whichever. So what I'm saying is whenever they ask me to greet, I'm going to pop up an alert dialog, and it's going to say, hi there, thanks for clicking me. You get it? You get it. This is cool. Okay, let's try it one more time and see if it works. Look at there. Hi there, thanks for clicking me. That was pretty cool, isn't it? Okay, that's that greet.html. But what's wrong with this? It ignores what we typed in here. We really want to know. We want it to do something with this information, right? Okay, make sure you understand this, and then we'll look at the next variation of it. Back up a bit. Let's do greet name. Now this one looks the same, but as we look at the code, it's a bit different. Okay, let's see how it behaves, and then we'll look at the code to see what's different. I'm going to type in my name, Andy, and then we'll hit the submit button. Hi, Andy. It knows me. It loves me. I feel needed and wanted. Oh, that's so cool. All right, we'll stop that. Now let's look at the code and see what else you can see. When you look at the HTML, it looks exactly the same. You following? You got the label, input, button, submit, on, click is greet. Okay, everything's the same. But what's interesting is that I have changed the content of greet. Greet is now a little bit more fancy. And what greet does is something very important. Greet now works with data. And of course, that's the whole point of computer programming, is to do interesting stuff with data. There's lots of different kinds of data. In this JavaScript language we're doing, there's three main kinds of data. You've got text, you've got numbers, and then you've got everything else, which JavaScript calls objects. Okay, cool. So what do we got? Well, take a look at line 8. The first thing you'll see on line 8 is this keyword var. That means make me a variable. A variable is just a place in memory to hold stuff. It's kind of like the variables in math, but ours are cooler because they have better names than X and Y. We can have names that mean something. I like that. And they can contain more than just numbers. We can put all kinds of stuff in there. So var means make me a variable. And my variable is called txt name. Well, think about that. That was familiar. We had an object that we built, this input element, whose ID was txt name. Oh, you're way ahead of me. That is true. That is exactly true. But just because it's in the HTML doesn't mean that our JavaScript will know how to work with it. So what line 8 does is it goes and it says, JavaScript, I want to talk to that form. I want to talk to an object on the form. You get that? And so var text name gets, when you see a single equal sign, I'd like you to read it as gets. Because we're not talking about equality here. We're talking about assignment. We're assigning something to something else. So var text name gets document.getElement by ID. txt name. Huh? Okay, listen to this. It's like a sentence. Document, go get an element by ID, txt name. So we're saying, document, please find something in yourself that has the ID txt name. So the document says, dooby-dooby-doo, I'm happy. I'm looking for IDs. That doesn't have an ID. Ooh, that one's txt name. Here you go. And so it creates this space in memory, and it's called txt name. It's a representation of this text box. Not the string Andy, not the text inside the text box, but the text box itself. That's important because the text box is not the same as its contents. The text box I could modify, change its size, change its background color, whatever. But I can also deal with the contents. Those are two different things. You okay? Yeah, okay. So the first thing we do in line 8 is we create a variable that represents the text box. We'll do this all the time in JavaScript programming. We'll create a variable and then we'll fill it in with some kind of value. It'll be an object. For now, it's objects on the screen, like text boxes. Later on, we'll make our robot zombie kittens or whatever, and we'll make them into objects too. Yeah, it's all the same. Okay, so far so good? Great. But the text box itself is not the name. So take a look at line 9. We're going to create another variable. This one's called username. Now this is going to be text, and what does it do? Well, it takes txtname.value. Oh, that kind of makes sense. The dot is used to help us build sort of sentences or instructions around objects. We'll learn a little bit more about that as we get deeper, but right now it makes sense, doesn't it? Give me the value of txtname, and then we'll copy that over to the new variable username. So line 8 says, go find the thing called txtname, assign it to a variable txtname. Line 9 says, okay, now that you have that variable txtname, give me its value and assign that to username. Okay, I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it. Are you seeing it? Okay, cool. Now you look at line 10, and it's our old friend alert. Okay, that makes sense, alert. But here's something interesting. Before, when we alerted, we just had one big piece of text in there. But now we've got two pieces of text and username. What's happening? Well, we'll run it and see. Okay, please type your name, Andy. We'll click it, and it says, hi, Andy. It knows me. All right, good, good, good. But how did it get that? This doesn't say Andy. This says username, and it didn't say hi username. It said hi Andy. Here's what's happening. When you send text in quotes to the alert statement, it prints that text. When you send a variable name, it says, oh, you don't want to see username. You want to see the value of the variable username. Okay, that's great. So it prints hi and a space, and then the value of username, and then an exclamation point. Now, the plus sign in this particular context just means smudge those things together so it's one big piece of text. We'll come back to that idea in a week or so. But do you see what's happening? I'm building one big old piece of text, passing it to alert, and the alert pops it up. So let's try it one more time. Yeah, just so you know, it's not just me, and we'll go with somebody else's name. All right, we'll click that. Hi, Heather. It likes Heather, too. She's great. Okay, so whatever the user types in will come back. That's a very, very powerful idea. Do you agree? Well, I'm glad you do. So now there's one more thing we want to do before we move on, and that is, all right, this dialog box, this pop-up, it's annoying. I'll give you that. For one thing, yours won't look like mine necessarily because every browser does it differently. You got a Mac, it's going to look different. If you're using Firefox or IE, it'll look different than mine here on Chrome. So that's a little annoying. The other thing is that these things are rude. They really don't do anything until you acknowledge them, and it gets in the user's way. They don't like them. You know what would be better? It'd be better if we could modify the page directly, like this. Let me show you one. How about this? Please type your name. Right now there's an empty thing down there. We'll do this. Elizabeth. Okay, we'll submit. And it says, hi, Elizabeth, right there in the web page. So it didn't pop up a dialog this time. This time what it did is it modified the page itself. Whoa. Yeah, I know. It's so cool. All right, let's get rid of this source code because it's confusing, and we'll pop up this new one, see what it does. It's pretty exciting, and, of course, it builds on the examples we've already seen, so don't get too freaked out. Look at the HTML first because that's kind of the playground. The first thing we do is set up the playground, and then we write code to make the playground do fun stuff, well, to do the playing. So you look at the HTML, and most of it is the same, but after the form, we have something new here on line 27. You see that div ID is output, empty, /div. So what's a div? Well, a div is a special thing that's an HTML element. It doesn't have any particular meaning on its own, which means we can use it for anything we want. That's really cool. So we've got this div, and I'm attaching to it an ID. You can attach an ID to a div? Well, yes, you can. And why would we want to do that? Because we're going to refer to it in code. So the div has a /div pair. Now, typically, I won't put anything in there at all. I'll leave it truly empty. But just so that you can see where that div is, you can see there's the word empty, and there it is. So that's the part where we're going to see something soon. Okay? Okay, great. Now we look, the rest of the HTML is the same. We've just modified greet. And if you look at greet, mostly that's the same. Lines 7, 8, and 9 haven't changed, except line 10 is new. We've made a third variable. This variable is output, and that is document.getElementById output. You following? We're telling the browser, dear browser, please go find an element called ID and put that in this find an element called output, or whose ID is output, and put it in this variable I'm calling output. Love me. And so you do that, and by the end you'll have a variable representing the output. Now, output is not a text element. It doesn't have a value like the text box does, but it turns out you can change what's inside it with another really neat property called innerHTML. So when you look at line 11, output.innerHTML gets something. Well, what are we doing? We're saying, hey, I want you to change the HTML code inside this div to whatever I want it to be. Wow. Yeah, we can put anything we want inside there, and it will dynamically change the page itself. So output.innerHTML gets hi plus username plus exclamation point. So what's that doing? Well, watch. We're going to type in somebody's name here, and then we hit the submit button. Watch that empty area, and it gets changed to Hi Matthew. Wow, that's incredible, isn't it? Yeah, it really is deep, because what we're doing is we're creating this mechanism that allows us to get information from the user and dynamically change the page itself based on user input. So you could have this go to anybody with any name, and it would look like that page is talking to that person. Isn't that fun? Yeah, we're really close to being able to do our word story game. We've got a few more things to do. Come back in the next session and we'll look at how to make this look a little bit better when you have more than just a few elements on the screen. And then we'll put it all together and make the game. I can't wait. All right, see you soon.